The house had settled into one of those rare, gentle moments. The kind that feels like a deep breath after a long day. Warm light moves softly across the living room walls. Not bright, not dim. Just enough to make everything feel calm and safe. A lamp near the couch cast a golden glow. It softened the corners of the room, turned ordinary furniture into something almost comforting. Outside, the sky was finishing its slow fade. The last hints of orange and blues slipped away behind the trees. Night arrived without hurry. Ethan sat on the couch, shoulders relaxed. One arm resting along the back cushion. His phone was in his hand, but his mind wasn't really on it. He scrolled. Paused. Scrolled again. The quiet felt earned. From down the hall came a faint, steady sound. The soft hum of a baby monitor. A gentle reminder that life had changed. In the best way. Ethan glanced toward the hallway for just a moment. A small smile touched his face. Finally asleep, he murmured to no one in particular. At his feet, Max lay stretched out on the rug. A golden retriever. Broad-chested. Calm eyes. The kind of dog who carried peace in his presence. Max didn't sleep deeply. He rested. Alert, but relaxed. His chest rose and fell slowly. One ear flicked now and then, catching sounds Ethan barely noticed. The house creaked softly as it cooled. Pipes ticked. Somewhere outside, a car passed and disappeared. Everything was normal. Comfortably normal. Ethan leaned back, letting the stillness wash over him. This was the moment he looked forward to all day. No emails. No meetings. No noise. Just home. Just quiet. Then Max moved. Not suddenly. Not sharply. He simply lifted his head. Slowly. His ears tilted forward. Not stiff. Not alarmed. Just attentive. Ethan didn't notice at first. Max shifted his weight, rising to his feet with careful ease. His nails made the faintest sound against the hardwood floor. He took a few steps forward. Stopped. Stood facing the hallway. Still. Focused. Ethan glanced up then. He frowned slightly, not concerned, just curious. "What is it, buddy?" he asked softly. Max didn't look back. His gaze stayed fixed down the hallway. Toward the nursery. The dog's tail was still. Not tucked. Not wagging. Neutral. Balanced. Then came the bark. Low. Single. Measured. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp. It sounded intentional. Ethan blinked. He waited. Nothing else followed. No crying. No sudden noise. No change in the quiet rhythm of the house. Ethan exhaled and gave a small chuckle. "Probably the house settling," he said gently. "Or a squirrel outside." Max didn't react. A moment passed. Then Max barked again. Same tone. Same calm volume. Almost like he was reminding Ethan of something. Not warning him. Ethan's smile faded, not replaced by fear, but by curiosity. He sat forward slightly. Max's posture was what caught his attention. The dog wasn't tense. Wasn't pacing. Wasn't whining. He looked steady. Grounded. As if he knew something. "Max?" Ethan said, quieter now. The dog's ears flicked at his name, but his eyes didn't leave the hallway. Ethan felt a subtle shift in his chest. A pull. Not panic. Just awareness. Max took one step forward. Then another. He stopped just before the hallway entrance. Sat down. Straight-backed. Focused. Waiting. The baby monitor hummed softly on the coffee table. Ethan's eyes drifted toward it. Then back to Max. The dog turned his head just enough to look at him. Their eyes met. Max's gaze was calm. Steady. Almost reassuring. No urgency. Just certainty. Ethan swallowed. "You're acting like there's something I should check," he said quietly. Max didn't move. Didn't blink. Ethan stood slowly. The room seemed quieter now, not because sound had vanished, but because his attention had sharpened. He picked up the baby monitor. The screen was dark. He hesitated. Just for a second. Not because he was afraid, but because something about this moment felt important. He glanced down at Max. The dog's tail gave a single, slow thump against the floor. Ethan turned the monitor on. The screen flickered. Soft green night vision filled the display. The nursery appeared. Crib rails. A familiar blanket. The gentle rise and fall of a tiny chest. Everything looked fine. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "See," he whispered. "All good." Max didn't bark. Didn't relax. He leaned forward slightly. Ethan tilted the monitor, adjusting the angle. That's when he noticed it. Not something dramatic. Not something obvious. Just movement. Subtle. Rhythmic. A small shift near the crib. Ethan's brow furrowed. He leaned closer. Max stood. Moved beside him. Sat again, closer this time. Almost protective. The house remained quiet. Warm. Still. But something had changed. Ethan felt it. A quiet realization beginning to form. Not yet clear, but unmistakable. Max let out one more soft bark. Gentle. Certain. As if to say, "Look again." And as Ethan stared at the monitor, the calm of the evening deepened into something else entirely. Because whatever Max had sensed, whatever gentle truth was unfolding in that softly lit nursery, it wasn't random. And it wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of something beautiful. Ethan didn't move right away. He stayed standing near the couch. Baby monitor held loosely in his hand. Eyes still on the glowing screen. The nursery looked peaceful. Too peaceful. The kind of peaceful that almost convinces you nothing could possibly be wrong. Almost. Max shifted beside him. Not restless. Not anxious. Just present. The dog's body aligned with Ethan's legs. Close enough that Ethan could feel the quiet warmth of him. "That was just a stretch," Ethan whispered. More to reassure himself than anyone else. "Babies move in their sleep." He nodded once, as if settling the thought. The monitor hummed softly. Ethan lowered it slightly. Then stopped. Max had lifted his head again. Ears forward. Eyes fixed. Not on the hallway this time. On the monitor. Ethan noticed the way Max's breathing had changed. Slower. Deeper. Intentional. "Hey," Ethan murmured, crouching down. "What are you seeing?" Max didn't respond with sound. He leaned forward. Just enough to bring his nose close to the screen. He didn't sniff. Didn't touch. He simply watched. Ethan followed his gaze. The image shimmered faintly with night vision grain. The crib rails cast soft shadows. The blanket rose and fell in a gentle rhythm. Then, there it was again. A small movement. Not sharp. Not sudden. Just off. Ethan leaned closer, heart steady but attentive. The baby's head turned slightly. A tiny arm shifted. Normal. But then the blanket moved again. A subtle bunching near the baby's shoulder. Ethan frowned. "That's odd," he whispered. Max let out a quiet sound. Not a bark this time. More like a breath pushed gently through his nose. A reminder. Ethan adjusted the camera angle. Just a little. The view changed. And suddenly, it made sense. The baby's breathing. It wasn't labored. It wasn't fast. But the blanket had crept too high, covering more than it should. Ethan's chest tightened, not with fear, but with sudden clarity. "Oh," he breathed. Max's tail thumped once. "Slow. Certain." "That's what you saw," Ethan said softly. He stood up straight, movements careful now. Not rushed. Not panicked. Just deliberate. "Good boy," he whispered. Max stood too. Walked with him toward the hallway. Side by side. The lights remained dim. The warmth followed them. Each step felt grounded. Intentional. As they reached the nursery door, Ethan paused. He glanced down. Max looked up at him. Their eyes met. The dog's expression hadn't changed. Still calm. Still steady. As if to say, "You're here now. It's okay." Ethan opened the door slowly. The nursery light stayed off. Only the soft glow from the monitor guided him. The room smelled faintly of baby powder and warm cotton. Everything felt peaceful. Ethan stepped closer to the crib. The baby slept soundly. Cheeks flushed with warmth. Lips parted just slightly. Ethan gently adjusted the blanket. Lowered it. Smoothed it. The baby sighed. Settled. Didn't wake. Ethan exhaled. A deep, grateful breath. "That was close," he whispered. Max sat just behind him. Watching. Guarding. Ethan rested a hand on the crib rail for a moment. Then he reached down and placed his other hand on Max's head. The fur was warm. Familiar. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly. Max leaned into the touch. No celebration. No excitement. Just quiet understanding. They stood there together for a moment longer. Man and dog. Sharing the calm they had just protected. When they finally turned back toward the living room, the house felt different. Not tense. Not shaken. Stronger. More connected. And for the first time, Ethan understood something he'd never fully noticed before. Max wasn't just in their home. He was part of it. Tuned to its smallest rhythms. Its softest needs. And whatever this bond was, whatever instinct guided Max so gently, it was only beginning to reveal itself. The living room welcomed them back with the same warm glow. But it didn't feel quite the same anymore. Not quieter. Not louder. Just deeper. Ethan set the baby monitor back on the coffee table. The screen glowed steadily now, calm and unchanged. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he stood there for a moment. Hands on his hips. Letting the weight of what had just happened settle in. Max walked past him. Turned once. Then curled up on the rug again. The same spot. The same position. As if nothing unusual had happened at all. Ethan watched him. Really watched him. Max's breathing slowed. His eyes stayed half open, not sleeping, not fully awake. Alert, but peaceful. You knew, Ethan said softly. Max's ear flicked. That was all. Ethan lowered himself onto the couch. The cushions sighed beneath him. The room hummed gently. Lamp, monitor, distant night sounds outside. Normal again. But Ethan's mind wasn't. He replayed the moment in the nursery. The timing. The calm. The certainty in Max's posture. No panic. No noise. Just awareness. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. How long have you been doing that? He asked quietly. Watching, listening, noticing things I don't? Max didn't move. Didn't need to. Ethan smiled faintly. He thought back to the past few weeks. The late nights. The exhaustion. The way the house had rearranged itself around a tiny new life. And Max. Always nearby. Always choosing doorways. Corners. The space between rooms. Ethan had assumed it was habit. Comfort. Now he wasn't so sure. He glanced toward the hallway. Then back at Max. The dog shifted slightly, adjusting his position to face the nursery again. Even while resting, Ethan felt something warm rise in his chest. Not surprise. Recognition. You've been standing guard, he murmured. Max's tail gave one slow sweep against the rug. Ethan let out a soft breath. Half laugh. Half disbelief. I didn't ask you to do that. Max opened his eyes fully now. Looked at him. There was no pride there. No expectation. Just presence. Ethan sat back, letting the quiet stretch. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. And yet, everything felt held. Protected. Ethan reached down and scratched behind Max's ear. The dog leaned subtly into the touch. Not demanding. Just accepting. You're different since the baby came home, Ethan said. I thought maybe I imagined it. He paused. I didn't. Max's breathing stayed steady. His body language unchanged. As if this had always been obvious. The baby monitor remained calm. The nursery stayed still. Ethan stayed awake longer than he usually did. Not because he was worried. Because he was curious. He began noticing things he'd overlooked before. The way Max lifted his head. Before the baby stirred. The way he repositioned himself. When the house grew too quiet. The way he looked to Ethan afterward. Not for praise. But acknowledgement. Time passed softly. Eventually, Ethan stood. All right, he whispered. Bedtime. Max rose immediately. Followed him without hesitation. As they moved down the hallway, Ethan glanced into the nursery once more. Everything was perfect. He turned off the living room lamp. Darkness didn't feel empty. It felt watched over. As Ethan climbed into bed later, Max settled beside it. Not on it. Not far from it. Exactly where he could hear. Exactly where he could respond. Ethan lay staring at the ceiling. A small smile formed. Guess I'm not the only one on night duty, he whispered. Max's tail thumped once in reply. Soft. Certain. And as the house drifted fully into sleep, Ethan realized something important. He wasn't just learning to be a father. He was learning to trust. The quiet wisdom of the dog who had been watching all along. Morning arrived gently. Not with an alarm, but with light. A pale stripe of sun slipped through the curtains, resting across the far wall like a quiet invitation to wake. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he stayed still, listening. The house breathed around him. Soft. Steady. From the hallway came a familiar sound. The baby monitor's low hum. And beneath it, Max. Ethan turned his head. The dog lay in his usual spot near the doorway, body angled toward the nursery, head resting on his paws. Awake. Of course he was. You didn't sleep much, did you? Ethan whispered. Max's tail tapped the floor once. Ethan smiled and sat up. There was something different in him this morning. Not tension. Not concern. Curiosity. A quiet, growing interest that refused to stay in the background. As Ethan moved through the morning routine, he began watching Max the way Max watched everything else. In the kitchen, while coffee brewed, Max sat near the hallway entrance. Not begging. Not wandering. Just positioned. When the baby stirred faintly, Max's ears lifted before any sound reached Ethan. When the stirring stopped, Max relaxed again. Ethan noticed. He noticed again when he stepped into the nursery. Max didn't follow all the way in. He stayed at the threshold, as if the room belonged to someone else now. Ethan changed the baby quietly, the morning light warming the walls, soft shadows moving gently with each motion. Max watched from the doorway. Never intrusive. Never distant. Afterward, Ethan carried the baby into the living room. Max stood immediately. Moved ahead of him. Cleared the path. Ethan paused. That's when it struck him. You're not reacting, Ethan murmured. You're anticipating. Max glanced back at him. Then forward again. As if the idea required no explanation. Later that morning, Ethan sat on the couch with the baby asleep on his chest. The television was off. The house felt wrapped in warmth. Max lay nearby, still facing the hallway, still listening. Ethan shifted slightly. The baby stirred. Max's head lifted instantly, before Ethan even adjusted his hold. Before the baby made a sound. Ethan's breath caught, not in alarm, but awe. You feel it, he whispered. Max didn't move closer. Didn't bark. He simply stayed ready. Time slowed. Ethan began replaying moments from the past weeks. How Max had started sleeping lighter. How he chose different places in the house. How he seemed to understand the rhythm of this new life faster than anyone else. Even faster than Ethan himself. That afternoon, while sunlight drifted lazily across the floor, Ethan sat on the rug beside Max. He placed a hand on the dog's chest. Felt the steady heartbeat beneath warm fur. You decided this on your own, Ethan said quietly. Didn't you? Max exhaled slowly. A calm, grounding sound. Ethan leaned back on his hands, staring at the ceiling. He felt something shift inside him. A deep respect. A humbling realization. This wasn't obedience. This wasn't training. This was choice. Max had chosen to care. Chosen to watch. Chosen to protect, not with noise or force, but with presence. As evening approached, the house settled again. And this time, Ethan didn't wait for Max to signal anything. He checked the monitor on his own. Adjusted the blanket carefully. He learned. He adapted. And Max watched him do it. That night, when Max took his place near the hallway, Ethan didn't question it. Didn't dismiss it. He nodded. Almost like a silent agreement between them. Curiosity had turned into understanding. And understanding was quietly becoming trust. The days began to settle into a rhythm. Not a strict schedule. Nothing in the house was that predictable anymore. But a gentle flow that everyone seemed to learn together. Especially Max. Ethan noticed it in the small things first. The way Max shifted positions throughout the day. Never random. Always intentional. In the mornings, he chose the patch of floor that caught the first light from the window. Close enough to the nursery to hear everything. far enough to let the room stay quiet. In the afternoons, when the house warmed and shadows grew longer, Max moved closer to the hallway. Always closer. Ethan stopped questioning it. He started expecting it. One afternoon, rain tapped softly against the windows. Not hard. Just enough to make the world outside feel distant. Ethan rocked the baby gently in the living room. The sound of rain blended with slow breathing. Max lay nearby. Then, without sound, he lifted his head. Ethan followed his gaze. Nothing happened. No cry. No movement on the monitor. Ethan waited. A few seconds later, the baby shifted. A small restless sound escaping before settling again. Ethan looked back at Max. The dog's head lowered once more. Ethan felt a quiet smile form. Patterns, he murmured. Max's tail brushed the floor. As days passed, the patterns grew clearer. Max responded before events, not after. A tiny cough in the nursery. Max stood. A longer pause in breathing. Max leaned forward, attentive but calm. Ethan mirrored him. He learned when to wait. When to check. When to simply trust that everything was fine. One evening, Ethan sat on the floor sorting through baby clothes. The room was warm. The light was soft. Max rested beside him. The baby monitor hummed peacefully. Ethan reached for a folded onesie. Max's ears lifted. Ethan froze. They both waited. The monitor crackled faintly. A soft whimper followed. Ethan was already on his feet. By the time he reached the nursery, the baby had barely begun to fuss. Ethan settled the baby quickly. No tears. No waking. When he returned, Max was waiting in the hallway. Sitting. Centered. Ethan knelt and placed both hands on Max's face. Looked into his eyes. "You're teaching me," he said quietly. Max blinked slowly. Calm acceptance. That night, as the house slipped into its familiar quiet, Ethan didn't turn the lights off right away. He sat with Max on the couch. The dog rested his head on Ethan's knee. The baby monitor glowed steadily. "You know," Ethan said softly, "I thought I'd be the one watching over everyone." He smiled. "Turns out, I had help." Max's breathing stayed slow and even. Ethan rested his hand on Max's neck. Felt the warmth there. Felt the bond deepening, not loudly, but steadily. The signs were never dramatic. Never urgent. Just consistent. Reliable. And in those small, soft patterns, Ethan realized something important. This wasn't a single moment of instinct. It was a quiet commitment. One Max renewed every day. Without being asked. Without needing praise. Simply because it mattered. And as Ethan turned off the light that night, he felt a deep sense of peace. Because someone else was listening too. Someone who never missed the small things. The shift didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly. The way understanding often does. Slipping into place when no one is looking for it. Ethan felt it one evening as he stood in the kitchen. Hands resting on the counter. Listening to the house. The baby monitor hummed. The refrigerator clicked softly. Outside, wind moved through the trees. Max sat at his usual spot near the hallway. Still. Attentive. Ethan watched him from across the room. Not with curiosity this time. With trust. He realized something then. He wasn't waiting for Max to alert him anymore. He was already tuned in. They were sharing the same awareness. The same rhythm. The baby stirred faintly. Max didn't move. Neither did Ethan. They waited together. The sound faded. Peace returned. Ethan smiled to himself. Later that night, as he prepared for bed, Ethan paused outside the nursery. He checked the monitor first, out of habit now, then opened the door slightly. The room glowed with soft night light. Everything was fine. He closed the door gently. As he turned, he found Max standing behind him. Not blocking the door. Just there. "You don't need to tell me anymore," Ethan whispered. "I see it now." Max's tail moved once. That slow, grounded motion. Ethan crouched down, bringing his eyes level with Max's. "You trust me," he said. "And I trust you." The words felt true as soon as he spoke them. That was the shift. Not fear becoming relief, but responsibility becoming shared. In the days that followed, Ethan felt lighter. Not less careful. Just less alone. When the baby cried, they responded together. When the baby slept, they rested together. Max no longer needed to bark. His presence was enough. One afternoon, Ethan sat on the floor with the baby on a blanket. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting slow-moving shapes across the room. Max lay nearby, eyes half closed. At peace. The baby made a small sound. Not a cry. Just a curious noise. Ethan smiled and leaned closer. Max lifted his head. They both watched. The baby settled. Ethan exhaled. He looked at Max. "I get it," he whispered. This wasn't protection in the loud sense. It was care. It was attention. It was love expressed through patience. That evening, as Ethan turned off the lights, he noticed Max had moved. Not closer to the nursery. Closer to Ethan. Just a little. As if the role had shifted too. Guard and partner. Watcher and friend. Ethan reached down and scratched behind Max's ear. "Good night," he murmured. Max settled with a soft sigh. The house grew quiet. And in that quiet, Ethan felt something settle inside him as well. Confidence. Gratitude. A deep, steady calm. Because the mystery wasn't just about what Max had sensed. It was about what Ethan had learned to feel. And the truth was moving closer now. Waiting patiently. Just like Max always did. The truth didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive with urgency. Or demand to be understood. It revealed itself slowly. In layers. The way meaningful things usually do. It began on a quiet afternoon. Ethan sat at the dining table. Laptop open but forgotten. A mug of coffee cooling beside him. The baby slept. The house was still. Max lay a few feet away. Head up. Eyes soft but focused. Ethan watched him without thinking about it. Then, almost absent-mindedly, Ethan began to count. Every time the baby shifted, Max noticed first. Not every movement. Only the ones that mattered. A longer pause in breathing. A subtle change in rhythm. A restless turn that meant discomfort was coming. Max didn't react to noise. He reacted to patterns. Ethan's breath slowed. That's when it clicked. "You're not listening," Ethan whispered. "You're reading." Max turned his head slightly. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Memories lining themselves up in his mind. The first night the baby came home. How Max had refused to sleep deeply. How he'd chosen doorways instead of couches. How he positioned himself so sound could reach him from multiple rooms. This wasn't instinct alone. It was learning. Observation. Adaptation. Max had studied the house. Studied the baby. Studied Ethan. And then, quietly, he'd adjusted his entire world around them. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. Not sadness. Gratitude. You chose us, he said softly. Max stood, walked over, sat beside Ethan's chair. Close, but not pressing. Ethan rested a hand on Max's back. Felt the steady warmth there. I thought love was loud, Ethan continued. I thought it meant doing more, saying more, worrying more. He shook his head slightly. You taught me something different. Max's breathing stayed slow. Grounded. The baby stirred faintly in the other room. Max didn't move. Neither did Ethan. They waited. The baby settled. Ethan smiled. The truth was simple. Max wasn't guarding against danger. He was maintaining balance. Keeping the house in rhythm. Not reacting to problems, but smoothing them before they became problems at all. That evening, as the sun dipped low and filled the living room with amber light, Ethan sat on the floor. Max lay beside him. The baby monitor glowed softly. Ethan looked around the room. At the toys. The blankets. The quiet life they were building. You're not just a dog, he said quietly. You're part of how this family works. Max leaned into his side. Just slightly. Enough. Ethan closed his eyes. For the first time since becoming a father, he didn't feel like he was catching up. He felt present. Because the truth behind Max's behavior wasn't mysterious after all. It was beautiful. Max loved them. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. The night arrived the way it always did now. Slow. Unhurried. Kind. Ethan noticed it first in the light. The living room lamp cast a soft amber glow across the walls, turning the space warm and familiar. As if the house itself had learned how to hold them gently. Outside, the world settled. Inside, everything found its place. The baby slept. Not the restless kind of sleep, but deep. Even. Content. The baby monitor rested on the table, its screen glowing steadily. No sudden movements. No sharp sounds. Just quiet life unfolding the way it was meant to. Ethan sat on the couch, hands loosely folded. Breathing slow. Max lay on the rug at his feet. Not tense. Not alert in the way of duty. Relaxed. Complete. This was new. Not because Max had stopped watching, but because he no longer needed to be on guard. The house had learned its rhythm, and Max had helped teach it. Ethan looked down at him. You did your job, he whispered. Max's tail moved once. Lazy. Comforted. Ethan leaned back, eyes drifting toward the ceiling. For the first time in weeks. Months, maybe. His mind wasn't racing ahead. He wasn't listening for every sound. Wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. He trusted the quiet. That was the healing. Not the absence of worry, but the presence of trust. Later, Ethan stood and walked toward the hallway. Not because he was prompted. Not because of a bark. Simply because it felt right. Max didn't follow immediately. He watched. Measured. Then, after a moment, he stood and joined Ethan. Side by side. They stopped outside the nursery door. Ethan rested his hand lightly against the frame. The door was slightly open, letting a thin line of warm light spill into the hall. Inside, the baby slept peacefully. Chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Ethan didn't step in. Didn't adjust anything. There was nothing to fix. He stood there for a moment. Just looking. Just breathing. Then he felt it. Max sat beside him. Close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Not guarding the door. Sharing the moment. Ethan knelt down slowly. He placed a hand on Max's chest. Feeling the calm heartbeat beneath the fur. You didn't just watch over him, Ethan whispered. You watched over me too. Max leaned into the touch. Warm. Present. Ethan swallowed. His eyes stone, not with sadness, but with release. All the pressure he hadn't realized he was carrying began to soften. The need to be perfect. To never miss anything. To hold everything alone. Max had quietly taken some of that weight. Without being asked. Without being thanked. He had simply stayed. They returned to the living room together. Ethan turned off the hallway light. The house dimmed into a gentle hush. He sat back down on the couch. Max followed. Then did something he hadn't done before. He climbed halfway onto the couch. Not fully. Just enough. His head rested against Ethan's thigh. Ethan froze for a moment. Surprised. Then he smiled. He rested his hand on Max's head. Yeah, he whispered. I think we're both done watching for tonight. Max sighed. A long, deep sound. The kind that comes from safety. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time didn't matter. The baby monitor remained calm. The house held steady. Ethan's breathing slowed to match Max's. And in that stillness, Ethan reflected on everything that had changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But completely. He thought about the first bark. How he'd almost dismissed it. How easily he could have missed the meaning behind it. And how grateful he was that he hadn't. Because the truth wasn't just that Max had noticed something. It was that Max had cared enough to act. Gently. Thoughtfully. Persistently. Not to be praised. Not to be rewarded. But because love, for Max, meant attention. It meant staying awake when others slept. It meant learning the quiet language of a home. And responding to it faithfully. Ethan closed his eyes. He didn't fall asleep right away. He stayed there, feeling the warmth of his dog, listening to the hum of the monitor, trusting the silence. Eventually, sleep came. Softly. Without effort. Morning arrived the same way. Light first. Sound later. The baby stirred. Not crying. Just waking. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. Max was still there. Still calm. Still present. But he didn't move first this time. Ethan did. He stood, stretched, and walked toward the nursery. Max followed after a beat. Unhurried. The baby greeted him with wide eyes and a small sound. Curious. Awake. Safe. Ethan lifted him gently. Held him close. Max sat nearby. Watching not for problems, but for connection. Ethan smiled down at his child. Then at his dog. A family. Not because they were perfect, but because they listened to each other. Later that day, sunlight filled the living room again. Life continued. Laundry waited. Dishes stacked. Ordinary things. But something fundamental had shifted. The house felt complete. Not because it was quiet, but because everyone in it belonged. Ethan knelt beside Max once more. Placed both hands around his face. Looked into his eyes. You were never barking at nothing, he said softly. Max blinked. Slow. Trusting. Ethan smiled. Because now he understood. Max hadn't been reacting to emptiness. He had been responding to meaning. To care. To love unfolding in its quietest form. And the truth behind his actions. The reason they mattered so much was more beautiful than anyone could have imagined.